Hello everyone, this is Wikipedia lecture from the course Social Media. This is technically the lecture from week 6, but we're in week 7. Unfortunately, as you're probably aware, there's lots of snow going on in Winchester. So to try and save us some time and save us 1 week further down in the course, I've decided to try and record this lecture. So we'll have a go. I'm going to talk through a few aspects of Wikipedia. If you do have any questions, we'll try and address them in the seminars next week. Okay, so to give you a brief introduction, Wikipedia, as you're probably aware, is an online encyclopedia. The entries are compiled by users and anyone can register for an account on Wikipedia, and once they've filled in a few criteria, they can start editing the entries on there. So consequently, it tends to be a site with lots of debate going on in the preparation of the articles. So when these articles are being made and being edited, there's lots of debate between the various editors, arguing out about specific issues, teasing out specific nuances and so on. Now, a number of authors contend that as well as being a platform on which debate occurs, Wikipedia is itself a cause for debate because it offers us something new. If you look at previous forms of encyclopedia, they've always been compiled by experts, and what Wikipedia does, it puts the emphasis upon us. It's us constructing the knowledge. So there is a distinct discourse about Wikipedia with defined sides on the position. So what I want to do in this lecture is go over some of those debates. So in this lecture we're going to look at what Wikipedia is supposed to be. We're going to look at some of the underlying logic or philosophy behind it, some of the rationales you get for why Wikipedia works in the way it does. And then we're going to look at some of the challenges and the critiques made of Wikipedia and the form of knowledge production that Wikipedia engenders. So we're going to look at what is Wikipedia supposed to be, we're going to look at the underlying logic or philosophy around it, and then we're going to look at an opposing number of views that critique that position. So, well, what is Wikipedia? Excuse me. It was launched in 2001 by Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger. I've just gone and checked how many current articles there are on it. And currently it lists, this is on the 1st of the 3rd in 2018, there's 5,578,631 articles in the English language. There's also in total about 43 or over 43 million articles in all sorts of different languages. I haven't got the most up-to-date figures of what these other languages are, but if you look at this chart over on the right hand side of the page, you'll see that. So English dominates it with 12.2% of all articles. You've got Cebuano, which is the language of the Philippines, comes in next at 9.2, Swedish 8.6, German, Dutch, French going down like that to Spanish on 3.0, and others on 44%. So Wikipedia is distributed across many different languages. There are over 20 million people currently working on Wikipedia who edit it and analyse it and seek to enhance the kind of quality of the articles on there. And of course all these Wikipedians work for free. All their labour is given over to Wikipedia without any income for themselves. And because of this kind of incredible labour, Wikipedia is very popular. It is the world's 6th most visited website. And we could probably say Wikipedia is the best example of crowdsourcing, of ordinary people giving up their money and contributing to a larger project. So it's not like when you've been taxed for something. We voluntarily give to Wikipedia. And you probably noticed about every year or every 8 months or so, Wikipedia puts up adverts and it asks for funding from its regular users. And so just give us $5 or $15 or however many units of your local currency that is equivalent to that. And that helps Wikipedia go forward. And that pays for the servers, it pays for the maintenance of all the equipment and so on. The donations are handled by a sub-media called Wikimedia. And they also have other aspects to Wikimedia, so they also make available public source, public access texts and images and bits of music that anyone can use and engage with. Now, Wikipedia builds on a software model called open source, And this is where people can improve on computer code themselves. So the code for Wikipedia that makes it possible, anyone is allowed to get a copy of that code. And what people who are skilled in computers often do is to try and seek ways to improve it. And so there's an idea behind Wikipedia that the general will of the people, that people working together can produce something better. And because it's not monetarised properly, it's all done voluntarily, and it's people's interests and passions that feed Wikipedia and drive it forward. So if we look at it, what it's supposed to be, we go to Wikipedia and say, well, what are you attempting to do with this? There's 5 principles, the first of which is this one here, I'm going to read out in a moment, but there's 5 main principles underpinning Wikipedia. So firstly, Wikipedia asserts it's an encyclopedia. It combines many features of general and specialised encyclopedias, almanacs and gazettes. Wikipedia is not a soapbox, and that's quite an important part. They're not seeking to be a political manifesto or anything like that, nor is it an advertising platform, a vanity press, an experiment in anarchy or democracy, or an indiscriminate collection of information, a web directory. It is not a dictionary, a newspaper, or a collection of source documents, although some of its fellow Wikimedia projects are. So Wikipedia is very definite that it isn't seeking to be some way of making money. It isn't seeking to be somewhere where people publish their ideas and get kudos for that. It isn't a place where you can put forward your political manifesto or any of the other things. Straightforward, Wikipedia is a form of encyclopedia, and it sits in a tradition, quite a long tradition, going back a good 200-300 years to early encyclopedias, about providing a book of knowledge. So if you look at the 5 principles, so the first one was Wikipedia, an encyclopedia. Wikipedia is written from a neutral point of view. It's trying to be objective in its description of knowledge. It's challenging the idea that knowledge comes from a particular perspective. And so Wikipedia holds to this earlier idea of knowledge, that through rationality we can arrive at the truth. So what Wikipedia says, we're trying to keep our language neutral, we're trying to be objective in how we see it. Wikipedia is free content that anyone can edit, use, modify and distribute. So they don't mind if you take Wikipedia and copy it to another page. What you need to do, however, is cite Wikipedia. Now there's a number of unscrupulous publishers out there, and what they do is they take pages from Wikipedia, put them together and pretend they're a book, and they publish those books. It's a bit naughty because they don't really own the copyright to those books. Wikipedia make that information free for everyone. So they're using that source of information and turning it into a profit. There's a bit here about editors should treat each other with respect and civility. Now one of the main things, it does lead to a lot of arguments, particularly on certain issues. And the Wikipedians get very agitated, and there'll be conflicts between them, there'll be rival positions on there. And if you go and look at some of the debates that actually occur behind the scenes, if you look at some of this, they get very, very heated, particularly about political topics, which is unsurprising really. Finally, Wikipedia doesn't have firm rules. There isn't an ultimate arbitration. It's based on the idea that people share ideas, and you arrive at a position through consensus. There's no absolute rules there. There are consensus. Rules can change in Wikipedia, and if enough people in the Wikipedia community decide that something isn't working, they will step in and change it. So it's a fully flexible, people-led process. So the idea of Wikipedia, aside of the principles, as a piece of, or a text, as like a digital text, Wikipedia can be said to be an application of Web 2.0 to the idea of knowledge management. And if you remember back to lecture 1, we talked about the principles of Web 2.0. And Web 2.0 is about getting communities of people to work collaboratively on things, to get people active and producing stuff. So it's applying the principles of Web 2.0 to the process of knowledge management. And knowledge management is a specific discipline, and it relates to a number of questions about information in the contemporary world. And you can go off and you can do whole master's degrees in knowledge management. Knowledge management is the science of how we think about knowledge, how we understand who owns it, who produces it, who is correct, and what they can do with knowledge. So these relate to some of the big questions of our age. Where does knowledge and information come from? Where do we get our ideas from? Where do we get our sense of truth from in the contemporary world? So who are the holders of knowledge? Who guards it, preserves it and edits it? Where do we go to find out information, and who can we trust? Now this is particularly pertinent today when you think back to all the trouble that's arisen over the past couple of years with the EU referendum and the election of Donald Trump. There's this big topic of fake news coming up. So fake news is the idea that there's news that's put out there as truth, but it isn't truth. So this question really fits right in with the idea of knowledge management. So these are some of the fundamental questions of knowledge management. Now, over time, these questions have been answered in different ways. And if you go and you look at a traditional society, if you look back at maybe UK or Europe before, I don't know, the turn of the 19th century, before the turn of the 18th century, from, before sort of like 1700 and something like that, and if you go to certain traditional society classes today, you tend to find that knowledge is owned and put out there by the priestly class. Religious leaders dominate the field of knowledge. It's the religious leaders that are able to read the holy texts and to translate these texts and to make that knowledge available to people. So in many traditional societies, religious leaders have an incredibly powerful position. That's where knowledge was kept. And this is why many older universities actually have their seats of learning within large cathedrals. And many scholars actually came out of the religious area. Now as we move into the modern world, we get a new class of people, a new group of people who become responsible for the management of knowledge. We take away the religion from these people, and we term these people the expert class. So these tends to be people like academics, scientists. Quite often it's typically men in white coats, and I say men for a particular reason because it's often been quite an exclusionary process. Women aren't allowed into this class of our society and haven't been for a number of years. Now it's a lot better than it was, but traditionally it's like, in much of our modern period of time, the expert class were an elite group of people. They came out of universities, they came out of scientific training and stuff like that. As we move into sort of like what we term the postmodern age, that's where we are now. This is from about the 1970s and 1980s onwards. We get a rising up of a new group of people. And instead, if we want to know where knowledge comes from, well, we have a new candidate, and it's us. So we live maybe in what has been termed a post-truth age. So we don't no longer trust experts. We had Michael Gove, the Minister for Education at the time, actually saying we've had enough of experts. We want us coming up with the idea. So we've got a transition here. From pre-modern times, it was religious people that determined knowledge. We move into modernity, where we had the application of knowledge, and then we come into a more recent period, postmodern times, where the shift has come again, and we don't believe experts anymore. We've got this new candidate for the owners of knowledge, and that's us. So this relates to a fundamental question. What is best, an expert or a crowd? Wikipedia is based on a fundamental assertion that sometimes a crowd of non-experts is better than a small number of experts. So basically what they're saying is, you get a lot of normal people together, they will produce a better answer than one or two experts. However, historical arrangements for the management of knowledge argue that the opposite is true. And they would say an expert is always better than a crowd. Now, of course, there's a few exceptions to this. There's a few parts of our life where we have historically thought that crowds are better at determining something than an expert. For example, if you turn to democratic politics, we don't have a group of elite expert people deciding who should rule a country. Instead, what we've got is we choose who runs the country. Look at the candidates, we are encouraged to read things, we look at their policies and profiles, and we all have a voice, and we make our decision, and it goes through there. Other systems, such as like, what is the best pop song? Well, we rely on the chart sales to tell us this. We'll not have an expert telling us what is the best pop song. Rather, it's a number of sales of a particular song that allows us to think of that song as the most popular. So we all have a vote again in this. But of course, pop music is mediated by experts such as Simon Cowell and so on. So with those few exceptions aside, how did we get to the idea that an expert is better than a crowd? What's the history of this idea? So to answer this question, we really need to turn to kind of like the history of Western thought. And we need to look back at how societies changed and transitioned from a traditional society into a modern society. And part of this is that European intellectual life went through a huge transition in the 18th and 19th centuries. And this is called the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment is the establishment of science. It's one of the many of the major sciences that we have today became distinct. They branched out from one another. They focused on particular fields of study. And they were all about challenging the established way of thinking. They were a challenging tradition. So if you think, for example, medicine, our medieval ideas of medicine had come out of our reinterpretation of the works of ancient Greece, and there's all sorts of odd things going on. And we didn't know why we were really doing things. So one of the medical treatments was you would stick leeches on people, or you would bleed people. You make a cut in their wrist and you take some of their bloods to try and stabilise the humours. But there was no real research going on. No one was looking why we were doing these things. And as science progresses and we discover more and more about human anatomy, about blood, about chemistry and stuff, the earlier practices became more and more challenged, and newer practices became spread over them. And these newer practices were driven by a quest for knowledge, by a desire for rational ways of doing things, and the development of what is termed a scientific method for knowing about the world. So rather than trusting what we've been told about something in the past, or something that was written in a religious text, we start developing a scientific method. I'm going to have to answer the phone. Hold on. Sorry about that, that was Neil. Okay, so we've got this establishment of science, the establishment of scientific method, which is all about the quest for knowledge, ways in which we can discover things, but discover things in a particular way. We weren't trusting on older systems of knowledge. Instead, we were trusting in this new method that we'd developed. Okay, and this is the application of method. The knowledge comes about through the application of a specific process. Now, you've all done various methods courses as part of your course, and that's how we, as experts in the media, develop our skills, and that's what you will become when you finish your degree. You will be a Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communication. So you will have understood how media scholars arrive at knowledge. So each discipline has its own particular methods. So knowledge comes about through the application of a method, and of course that process is best done by an expert, someone who's been through a training process to do it. Now, as you've probably seen, there's lots of complications when you're doing research. So normal people tend not to be aware of these problems. Normal people cannot follow the rigours of doing this. So we have a group of experts to do this. These experts are academics and scientists and specialists in the area. Now, what Wikipedia is, and is part of a movement that challenged the legitimacy of the expert. And the argument is that collectively, people are clever. Now, while we may be stupid individually, when we collectivise, when we get together, we are more clever than the sum of the parts. So if you take 10 people and you talk to them individually, they might all be quite stupid. And you'd think, well, putting them all together isn't going to make them any less stupid. But it does, according to this argument. And when you put people together, they are able to come up with more than the sum of their individual intelligences. So as a society, stupid people are more than compensated for by clever people. Let me give you a bit of an odd metaphor explanation of this. I'll introduce you to someone. So this is Francis Galton. It's Charles Darwin's half cousin, who was undoubtedly a very clever man, and he discovered and invented many advances in science and statistics. So, for example, he discovered fingerprints and the ways in which your individual fingerprint is unique to you. He developed many statistical methods that we still use today. Unfortunately, he was also a bit of a fascist and a bit of a racist, and he had lots of other kind of like psychological problems going on. So what he tried to do, he tried to apply Darwin's theory of the evolution of species to humankind, and he argued that different groups of people, maybe different social classes or different races or different nationalities, evolve up and you get to the elite group of people. So he was very much an elitist. He believed in breeding an elite class. So he wanted us to produce natural leaders. So as you can see, he's got echoes of sort of like the Nazi Party were in here as well. They took a lot of his ideas and developed them further. And he was part of this big 19th century and early 20th century application of scientific method to things that really scientific method can't solve. One of which is how society works. So he was trying to work out, using scientific method, how society works. It doesn't work like that. He was also a eugenicist, which means he believed in sterilising groups of people so that they did not breed. So he developed this idea of a hierarchy of the human races and a hierarchy of social classes. And therefore what you should do is you should sterilise the lower social classes to stop them breeding more than the amount of labour that we need. We don't want too many of them. We need a few, but not too many. Anyway, so Francis Galton was a very clever man, but also a bit of a racist, a bit of an elitist. Anyway, back in 1906, he went to the West of England Fat, Stock and Poultry exhibition down in Plymouth. These are large country markets where people would bring in their best inbreed cows and sheep and all sorts of things, and they might have the vegetable stores where you show your best avocado, or not avocado, your best aubergine or whatever it is, showing your best potato, and the judges rule in it. Anyway, at this large exhibition, he came across a guess the weight of an ox competition. So there's this great big fat ox, there it is in the picture there, and about 800 people had entered to guess the weight of the ox. And he thought, this is great, because these people are stupid. They might be farmhands, but they're not really going to be able to guess the weight of the ox. And that's a little bit like democracy. And he said the average competitor was probably as well fitted for making a just estimate of the weight of the ox as an average voter is of judging the merits of most political issues, i.e. not very. They can't guess the weight of the ox. They can't choose the best political candidate. And that shows us how wrong democracy actually is. So he did an experiment. He decided to look at what people actually said about the weight of the ox and then compare it to the real weight of the ox. So what he did, to test his theory, he collected all the tickets at the end of the day and he calculated their average. Now, we said there was about 800, but it was 787 tickets that he could actually read, because some of them were so badly written he couldn't make sense of them. So he added them all together. He put them in a great big line from the lowest to the highest. And the first thing he did, he worked out the average, the arithmetic mean, and the average and the median. And the median is the number dead in the centre. So if you got 787 things and you go to 394, I think number 394, that's exactly in the middle. It doesn't matter if that number's wrong, but you get the exact ticket that's in the middle if you line them up from the lowest to the highest. But then you added all the votes together and divided it by the ones and worked out the actual average as well. So the median one, the one dead in the centre, was 1207 pounds, and the mean, the arithmetic mean, was 1197 pounds. And then he checked the actual weight of the ox, and this is the big reveal. This is the interesting part. You ready? It was 1198 pounds. So added together, everybody comes up with 1197. The actual weight of the ox was 1198. So the average guess we had was £1 off, less than 0.01 0.1% wrong. How? And if the ox had probably gone to the toilet before it had been weighed, the vote would have probably been exactly, the guess would have been exactly right. How is this possible? Well, individually, the guesses were very mixed, but collectively, they were virtually exactly right. The good cancels out the bad. And as there were more good guesses than bad, the result is nearly correct. The good steers the bad. Do you see what I did there? It's very proud of that one, to be honest with you. Okay, so the good votes come in and knock out the bad votes. There's the, sort of like you've got your average point there in the middle, and you've got one outlier over here and one out here, and they knock each other off. But because there's more good votes in the middle, as people get better and better, and they're all trying to guess the right vote, using their knowledge and understanding of boxes, they gradually kind of added together and they got it almost precise. And in fact, the more guesses you get, the more precise the number is likely to be. So it's a good metaphor, but the story is not completely appropriate to Wikipedia because that was an undirected crowd. So people there were almost in competition to come up with a best answer. Wikipedia is better than that because Wikipedia seeks to improve continually upon knowledge. So someone puts a statement up. Now other people might have a tiny bit of knowledge that's slightly different to theirs. So they agree with most of it, but they can see one tiny area where they could improve it. So they do that. Someone else comes in, learns something from reading it, but knows something else that they could add or change on it. So everyone's working to improve the idea. So it's an ordered, directed crowd. People are trying to contribute to knowledge incrementally. So it's even better than just guessing. They're working to a set of principles to provide the best knowledge available. They seek to continually refine the knowledge and make it as good as it possibly can be. And that's why a crowd can be better than an expert, because an expert only has one or two perspectives, whereas a crowd has as many perspectives and as many small fragments of knowledge as there are people in the crowd. So this wisdom of crowds becomes very popular, and during the 2000s there were lots of optimistic books and articles published about the power of crowds and why collaboration is a really good thing. Moreover, collaborative activity becomes popular in many areas. I use it in my teaching quite a lot. I get students to work together, and in fact your degree, the manipulating media module, draws heavily upon this. But it's absolutely everywhere. If you look at lots of projects, we now bring people together to work collaboratively on things. Within these texts, the idea is that we're working the connective power of social media. We can work on collaborative projects, and in doing so we open up knowledge so that anyone who's interested can contribute to and engage with knowledge. There will be lots of arguments, of course, because people come with different ideas and they're coming with different facts and experiences. So what we need structure. We need structures to make this civil, but these arguments will lead to better knowledge, and as rationality will win out. And here we've got an echo of the work of Jürgen Habermas we talked about last week. And I very briefly mentioned there, he had something called discourse ethics, which is the ethics of how we should communicate with each other. Of course, Twitter doesn't do that very well. But the idea here is if we have sets of rules about how we should communicate and how we should make decisions appropriate, we will get better knowledge, and rationality, our logical way of thinking, will shine through. This will result in better knowledge than that of the self-appointed experts. So by us working together, we'll improve the fountain of human knowledge. Now, since its founding, Wikipedia has developed quite rigorous systems and is now firmly institutionalized. It's not monetarized though. So it's got lots of policies and practices, but still it's very much about not being monetarized. There are now control processes, humans and computers, that filter out malicious and mischievous problematic content. So if you go on there, I mean, one of the big things that often happens is you go to Tony Blair's site and someone's gone in there and changed it to Tony Blair's a war criminal. Very quickly the processes kick in and correct that. So it's no longer become a popularity contest, but it's a staged model of contribution. Every comment that's put on there actually goes through a review process by other Wikipedians to make sure that the comment isn't problematic. So they've improved it an awful lot. You can't just go in there and quickly change something. It then goes to other people who look at it and help you improve your statement, or get rid of it if you're just being naughty. Okay, I want to turn now to some of the criticisms of Wikipedia. So the optimism was met by lots of negative criticism of Wikipedia and collaboration. And there's kind of three main areas. I want to look at these fairly briefly. First, I want to look at the idea that credibility is derived from expertise. Secondly, that experts are actually good. And thirdly, a warning about the hive mind. Okay, credibility is derived from expertise. Academic knowledge is accepted as being of a higher value than other forms of knowledge, as it was produced by experts who follow a process, who understand that process, and will be able to discern, to check when the process is not being followed. So whenever an academic publishes something in a peer-reviewed journal or in a book, other academics look at that work and try to make sure that the academic has followed the process, has used a method to find it out. It isn't just saying something silly. So stuff published in academia has been through a process of consideration by peers who check it and the method used to produce it. So I get sent journal articles, I read through and say, that's quite good, but this bit here isn't holding true. The mathematics doesn't hold up, statistical analysis doesn't work, you can't infer that from this particular set of data, go back and do it again. And we constantly work in this way, changing it. Contrarily, democratic or wiki knowledge, not just Wikipedia but other forms, is legitimated not by expertise but by verisimilitude. Verisimilitude means the appearance of truth. If you remember back from exploring media theory, we talked about this a little bit. So verisimilitude is the appearance of truth. It looks like the truth, and it's done by popular acceptance. So we've had a rise in various fields such as citizen journalism, challenging established journalism. However, there are some fields of knowledge that maybe we don't want non-experts doing it. I'm not particularly in favour of citizen dentistry. I don't want someone who's not trained messing around with my teeth. I don't want a doctor who hasn't been to medical school and things like this. So there are aspects of a life where maybe the citizen and maybe the collaborative approach is good, but there's other ones we might want to be a little bit more unsure about. Would you want a citizen lawyer looking at your case, defending you in court? Would you want a citizen dentist? Would you want a citizen surveyor looking at your house? Do you want a citizen builder? Somebody who just says I can do it without any training? There's certain parts of life where maybe we're a bit more sceptical of this idea. Experts are good as they make new knowledge. Now, one thing Wikipedia does, it's really, really good at disseminating existing knowledge. It re-articulates it and redrafts previously published material. It ends up being an echo chamber. It churns information around, making new stuff up. So not making new stuff up, but taking old stuff and repurposing it and articulating it. But it doesn't engage in a production of knowledge or research that is valid. If you remember those terms, valid and reliable from your method thing. What Wikipedia doesn't do, it doesn't produce new knowledge. It doesn't raise the standard of knowledge of how much we know about a topic. All it does is allow people that don't know about the topic to come and read about it in an easier way. So it's taking existing knowledge and repurposing it and redistributing it. It just changes where the knowledge is stored. And this might be good, but it might also damage or pollute the process of peer-reviewed knowledge production. Because if people are just turning to Wikipedia for knowledge, they're not looking at the proper sources. So it becomes harder to see the good for the bad when so many people are recirculating it and making knowledge and drawing upon existing stuff. So experts are very good as they make new knowledge. Wikipedia is great because it recirculates it, but it itself doesn't make new knowledge. Finally, is the idea of the hive mind and what's been called the sleep of reason. So Western scholarship has a strong tradition of individualism, learning to be an expert and then having a reputation and therefore accountability. Okay, so the experts we trust are people that have been through the rigours. They've been tested, they've produced stuff that stood up to criticism, they've gone on. Collaborative knowledge is about disappearing into knowledge. There is no author of Wikipedia. There's no one who has responsibility of their credibility being jeopardised by bad information being on Wikipedia. No one's going to get punished if a lie is put on Wikipedia. Okay, so no one is accountable for that. And what's one of the problems of this? Without accountability, well, we kind of lose the threat. And I don't publish things because unless I'm absolutely sure they're true. So we end up with this idea that with Wikipedia, well, you can just put anything on there. So one of the problems of groupthink smothering individual challenge and creativity, and what some have called digital Maoism after Chairman Mao in China. And he did lots of problematic things. But one of the ideas of digital Maoism is that the dominant view supersedes others and crushes all other opposing ideas. And so this leads to what we might call the sleep of reason. When you've got everybody agreeing to the same idea, people are scared to stand up against it. So we end up with what's called the sleep of reason. This is a picture by Goya here. So when we're not paying attention to things, bad things happen. So to conclude, Wikipedia leads to a quite combative field. Some argue that it is the debate is not just about Wikipedia, but the wider issue of challenges in social life in late modernity. Now, lots of the old guard, of which I am one, are resisting this challenge, and we're still asserting that you need expert knowledge. Others say it's actually about conflating technology for practice. You need good knowledge on new technology, just as it was needed in books. So you can't, just because it's disseminated via the internet, it doesn't mean it can be bad knowledge. We've still got to have good knowledge behind it. Good online material still needs all the old processes as well. Okay, so I hope that's made some sense. We'll talk about it more in the seminar. Thank you very much.